Well, hello, and you're very welcome to another episode of the Women's National League podcast here on finalwhistle.ie. Myself, Breifne and Aaron, and of course, once again, joined by the ever present, shall we call him, Aaron Clark. I didn't know what I was going to call you there for a second, Aaron. A bit of a mind melt, but you're here. You're another week. It's been a bit of a break. We took a break, same as the league did. But we're back and raring to go again. How have you been over the last couple of days?
Absolutely, yeah. Obviously, the break probably come at the right time. You know, I was looking for a little bit of a break away from football, and then ended up with the dreaded COVID. So break away from the game sort of helped in that sense. But yeah, listen, enjoyed being back already. Two games last weekend. So no easing it in, and looking forward to another busy weekend.
Absolutely. Of course, we're coming to you today at 8 o'clock on a Thursday. We made the late decision yesterday evening. We just felt we couldn't compete with Love Island. So we waved the white flag, a bit like some of the boys are going to be doing later in the show, I think. But we are here today on a Thursday just to have a chat with you about everything that's coming up over the weekend. To look back at last weekend's results, some big talking points, particularly that Monday night game over in the UCD Bowl, which, as you mentioned off air to me, Noel King will have been the happiest with in terms of the results leaving Belfield on Monday evening. But it is, of course, the Cup weekend. And for the first time in a long time, we have junior clubs in the competition. And we caught up with someone who's no stranger to the Cup itself, but now comes back in her role as the goalkeeper with Whitehall Rangers. And that is former Women's National League goalkeeper, Grace McAuley Ryan. And she joins us now. Grace, you're very, very welcome to the programme.
How are you? How's it going?
We're great. But I suppose more to the point, how is it for you and your teammates in Whitehall with just a couple of days to your first game in the Women's FAI Cup in a long time?
Yeah, we're very excited about it. It's a big challenge, I suppose, for our team. I think the games that we did kind of get to play over COVID, and we kept ourselves fairly fit, and we've a really good, close relationship with most players in the team. I think up until a few months ago, we hadn't lost a game in something like 18 months. But again, we weren't in these competitions, in these senior competitions. So this year has definitely been tighter in our local league, where people have gone on holidays, which they didn't do for the last 2 years. They've gone on holidays, and so we've had to manage personnel, and now we're getting to play against the bigger teams, and the challenge is welcomed. And we've signed a couple of players over the last couple of months from the Women's National League, which is a big deal to a club in the Eastern Women's League. It's really what it's all about, enticing players to come back down and play local or intermediate football.
And in terms of your own cup run, like it was you qualified for this competition by getting to the semi-finals in the Intermediate Cup. Also in an Intermediate Cup final as well, having beaten another team who were in the FAI Cup, Finglas United.
Yes.
What sort of preparation does that give you? You know, it is a massive step up. We see there's been a couple of times where intermediate clubs have gone on being successful. Remember a couple of years back when the Shelbourne second team, they were known as the Shelbourne under 18s, got to the Cup semi-final when they played Shelbourne and that. So what does it's a big gap to bridge. How do you bridge it in terms of the opposition at Athlone on Saturday, and how do you prepare for it?
It's funny actually that you talk about that particular team that got that cup run, because I was playing with St. Catherine's at the time in the DWSL, and they beat us in this intermediate competition. So with St. Catherine's in 2011, I won the Senior All-Ireland in Turner's Cross, actually. And I've lost the Intermediate Cup twice, once with Whitehall Rangers and the other with that under 18s Shells team. They pummeled us for Catherine's, or playing with Catherine's. There's no doubt about it that there's a big step up there, but I think it's how the Women's National League have gone over the last 11 years, as long as it's gone. It's definitely created more athletes, as in it's a very athletic competition. So speed, fitness is massive. We would have a lot of ballers, but these are young girls training 3 or 4 times a week, and all they know is football, and we're very aware of that. But I think when you play in the women's game in intermediate football, it's a little bit more physical than what they're used to. And I think we might be able to bring a bit of that to it.
your own experience, I suppose you would have played in the early stages of the league. It was open in a couple of seasons, 3 or 4 years there. What's been the big difference for you, having made that transition, I suppose, from that Dublin Women's Soccer League into the Women's National League, and now been back in that intermediate junior grade again? How has that worked for you?
Great. So I'm actually a Whitehall Rangers player from the beginning. So Whitehall Rangers set up in 2003. I was 15 and one at the very first training session on the women's team. And then I left in 2011 to go and play at a higher level and played in the Premier Division with St. Catherine's and won a Senior All-Ireland that year. And then from there went to Shamrock Rovers and Raheny. And the step up immediately was like, you just... I suppose what the demands were from you, because the coaching level stepped up. So when it became a national league, it attracted in better coaching. Better coaching is better structure, more funding, better football. And I think that translates into our league. Like we're very lucky at Whitehall Rangers. We have an excellent coach of a high standard. And that translates to how we play on the pitch. However, we're all playing intermediate football because we have other things going on in our lives, and football isn't the be all and end all, which really it's what is expected of you in the Women's National League. So that's how I looked at it. I looked at, well, this is brilliant. I have more free time. I can do more things. So I'm on the coach education pathway, and I'm also a committee member with the EWFL and the Metropolitan Girls League. So it allows me to be more involved in other things, in I suppose, bridging that gap between intermediate football and the Women's National League.
Dipping the toes in a lot of different places. I like to see that. That's someone who would definitely see with, staying in football when you do decide that enough's enough in the playing terms. In terms of, you talked a little bit about the players you have. Like we see Rebecca Cray's there with you now. You've got Joan Daly who would have played there as well. I think Niamh Kennan's gone back as well. Like people who've won stuff in the National League as well. Like Rebecca's probably one of the most decorated captains, having led Raheny and Shelbourne.
Yeah, Sinead O'Farrelly signed for us last week as well. From Raheny and was with Bohemians a couple of years ago. And like you look at that and that's the community of football. They're all my friends that I played with, and I've been at them for the last couple of years to come back down. Immediately when I came back from the Women's National League and I went back to St. Catherine's, and then from St. Catherine's, to kind of put it into better perspective, when I went back to St. Catherine's and the coaching wasn't there and the structure wasn't there, it was fine. Like it was what I expected, but I could see why it wasn't attracting players who played at that level back in. I think there was a stage a couple of years ago. I was looking around and I was part of this Raheny team that went to Champions League in 2013, and with Katie McCabe, Megan Campbell, with Noelle, Rachel, Pearl, Rebecca, and I was looking, going, they were the players that were still playing football. Where's everybody else? They just had disappeared. Like they were doing nothing in the game. So I think now the structures have improved in the Eastern Women's League. We're attracting in a better quality of coach. We're getting more coverage through the FAI and different media sources like yourselves. And that's helping to improve the level of football that we can offer locally, and hopefully bridging that gap between the Women's National League and the Eastern Women's League. So
yeah, I suppose that was one of the big criticisms or the big worries for the junior teams and intermediate teams when the Women's National League emerged back in 2010, 2011, because they felt that it was going to decimate what was locally happening in each of the regions around the country. So when you lose the Peamounts, the Rahenys at the time, obviously, and others out of that league, and players going here, there, and everywhere at the time, it seems to really actually strengthened that league where players are now playing at the right level for themselves without maybe having their Katie McCabe's and whatever running games like they were at the time.
Indeed, I think the demand is going to be even more because the structures at National League level are there where they were never before. So now we have 17s, we have 19s, then we go senior. So we have a conveyor belt of footballers coming off, and if that gap is too high, what's going to happen to them? So we need to have proper structures in place at local level to encourage them to come in encourage them that are, I suppose, like, kind of get rid of this idea that it's a big drop down. Like my friends who I was playing with at Raheny were like, I wouldn't play local football. Like, if I'm not playing at the top, I don't want to play anywhere. And I'd be like, if you love the sport, you want to be involved. It doesn't matter in where you're involved, but you want to be involved.
Just on that, like, for me, I think it was a massive stage where the women's section could have tailed off, especially in Dublin in particular. You look at the ladies' Gaelic football has just gone through the roof. We've seen the emergence of rugby now, ladies rugby, and I think the emergence of the Eastern Women's Football League, it's probably rejuvenated the entire opportunity. In terms of that, would you like to see that maybe the Eastern Women's, the Munster, the Connacht and the Ulster maybe combine when the National League looks to extend further again to a second tier, to have options for these clubs maybe to also progress?
Absolutely. So the Eastern Women's League is a local league it was to replace the DWSL. It was where the Metropolitan Girls League and the DWSL came together and created this new league. I remember looking at the numbers of the DWSL probably 4 or 5 years ago, and it was like 500-600 players. And I know now that we have maybe 11 or 1,200 players playing in the Eastern Women's League. Ideally, or in my head, so I'm on the committee for the Eastern Women's League. I'm the treasurer on the committee, and I have been since the league set up 3 years ago. And ideally, if you had a team in the top division of the Eastern Women's League from every local women's National League team, so that's a couple of Dublin teams. That's 4 Dublin teams, is it?
Yeah.
You've got 4 Dublin teams, and they were competing at the top level, and they had a team inside of that league that if a player, like, think about it, the conveyor belt of players that are coming through there from 17s and 19s, and they were then, okay, you're not making the first team, but you're playing, and if you're not making the first team on a Saturday or a Sunday, you're coming and you're playing your 90 minutes on a Monday. And then you have proper competition. You've got players coming up and down. They're not being tied to a specific, where we're only allowed to play a certain amount of minutes down on the 19s team. It just improves football for everybody. It improves the level, and then it gets rid of that whole, I don't want to play down at that level. There's girls who want to be doctors, and there's girls who want to be engineers, and they're saying to themselves, well, work is just as important as playing football, so I can still maintain this level of football and go and study and go to work.
And keep in touch with that level of the game as well, which is very important. You're not leaving those clubs. You talked about the formation of Whitehall. Let's get back maybe to the game at the weekend, but also the history of the club and specifically Whitehall Rangers. You talked about that 2003 thing, and I suppose this idea of bringing in girls from elite levels isn't a new thing in Whitehall at all. It's not about the Sinead Farrelly story last week.
No.
From memory serves, there was a bunch came back from the States back in 2003. The likes of Jennifer Kett, Joanne Tobin was in there as well for a while. There was a few other that kind of ilk with international experience, oodles of women's FAI Cup medals to their credit with Shamrock Rovers, maybe 6-7 years before that, and that big run that Rovers went on under Simon Bradish. Any of those girls still involved, or is it a whole new generation within the club?
Jenny is still there. Obviously, she's very active in the team. And I think kind of over the last...
Is she still filling a jersey? Is she still lining out?
She does, yeah, she does. No, she's well able to get around as well. Not a bother to her. It's more kind of looking after your body, the injuries that you've picked up. And Jenny was an international goalkeeper, so she still holds she still has a lot of injuries from then, from her playing time then, and then going on and playing outfield at Whitehall Rangers since she joined us. But no, like the girls who've come to us, they've all only come to us in maybe the last 6 months. Before that, we've developed really nicely. Developed the squad really, really nicely. A really close bunch of girls with some excellent coaching. Like, honestly, like I said, I am a coach. I'm a UEFA B licensed coach, and I have coached women's teams, and I've worked with some of the best coaches in the country. But I can tell you, John Morgan is one of the best that I've ever worked with.
High praise, especially considering you've worked with quite a lot of good coaches. In terms of, you talk about the coaching structures and stuff like that, like, is it just the case that at this level, maybe the coaching is adapted more to what you need, rather than at the National League, you see everything's high paced, high intense, everything's drill. Where talk to me a little bit about the difference in sort of like when you're training and things like that.
I think a lot of what we do is ball work. We work on transitioning a lot. I would say that there's players on our team that don't have a deep understanding of football, you know, as say I would, haven't had lots of training and haven't had lots of team talks and working with statistics and, you know, being shown things on boards and have, you know, really detailed stuff that we do in the Women's National League or that we have done. And there's players that just need to be told what to do. So our training sessions really are about maximizing what we can do with the personnel that we have, in a very fun way, but it's very, very effective. And there's a huge psychological part of what John does that I haven't really seen in many other clubs that I've looked at, where he kind of sometimes antagonizes you on the pitch to see what your reaction's going to be, to ensure that you don't do that when you're on the pitch playing football. But in terms of what we see now in the Women's National League and how I look at it now, it's very much they're trying to build machines. And then whoever has the most naturally talented players are the ones who are on top. Yeah. And then they go and get shipped off. And then it's, okay, how are we going to deal with what we've lost for a little bit? And I don't think that there's players, well, maybe there is players falling through the gaps, you know, proper, you know, really ballers that are falling through the gaps there. But it's completely different. It's such an athletic league as opposed to being, you know, being an extremely creative league. They play exactly how they're told to play. There's been some games when I look at teams who are, you know, pushing for 4th place in the league, it's like they don't know what to do in the final third because all they've been doing is working on defense and transition, and then that final part never seems to happen for them. But super athletes, absolutely super athletes.
In terms of the game at the weekend, obviously Athlone coming up to Dublin to face you. How much do you know about Athlone? They've had a couple of very good wins this year. Does it bring any trepidation for you, go into a bit of confidence?
No, I think all we can do is play our game and not worry about them, and hope that on the day, if we play the way we're able to play, they're in trouble. Because like I said, it's a different... Football is different at intermediate level. You get a lot of space in the Women's National League where, you know, they'll step off you. Well, they will hunt in packs, but they'll step off you. But they're a little bit hardier in our leagues. The women are. They're used to kind of getting stuck in, putting in the tackle. And I think that might take them a little bit. Maybe they'll underestimate us. I don't know. But we don't worry about them. We worry about what our tactics are, who and what personnel we have available to us on the day, and we give it 100%.
I don't mean to be disrespectful here, but when you talk about, you know, you look at, there was a picture on social media last year where the access to your training facilities were blocked because of tires on the road. You know, they're going to come in a little windy little road into facilities. Yeah. Maybe they're not used to. Is that sort of maybe an advantage, you having the game at home and not having it away? Like, because some people could have said maybe you could have moved the game to, say, Talca Park or something like that. But having that in your home ground, your facilities where you're used to.
Yeah, I think, I'm going to say absolutely, but we still play on the same pitch, and we're still in a very open, windy. God, if you came to see our game the other night, the wind and what it did to the game that we played, 7-goal thriller against St. Patsy Y on Monday night. And the wind had played an absolute riot on I think mainly on our team. But it is very unusual, isn't it, for a team in Dublin that close to the airport to have a nice windy little road that you can't fit down in tires. I believe most of the tires have been moved on or moved out of the way, but it's a general dumping ground for people who are trying to get rid of that stuff. I do think that may have a little bit of an advantage for us. But again, we just look at ourselves, give it 100%, and hope that does us on the day.
Breifne, just for a little bit of context for yourself, it's one of these pitches at the back of the airport where Parnell's GA Club and the Fianna and all went when the money was good. So it's in and around the back. So it's one of them. If it rains very hard, the pitch can be very soft.
Yeah, I might be a cushy, but I do know Dublin a little bit. Grace, listen, it's been an absolute pleasure having you. The very, very best of luck to you and your teammates on, I think it's Sunday you play So hopefully, maybe we'll see a giant kill in the first round of the FAI Women's Cup at the weekend. Who knows? It might even be Whitehall Rangers into the second round of the Cup on Sunday afternoon. Grace, thanks so much for joining us.
No worries. Thanks, lads.
Cheers, guys.
Grace McAuley there, McAuley Ryan, should I say, there, joining us for...
Breifne, just before we move on, I've just done a little bit of digging there. The intermediate semi-finals of the ladies' football are on Sunday.
Yeah.
Clare play Laois. There's players from Clare and players from Laois involved in the Athlone team. Could be a bit of a dodgy weekend for Athlone if the players have been missing.
Things do happen. You never know what it'll go. Maybe it'll all work out in favour of the junior intermediate side on Sunday afternoon. Time will tell. We'll talk about the FAI Women's Cup later in the show. We'll be more than happy to hear. We'll be previewing most of the games before we finish up. But first, let's maybe turn our attention back to the games. We'll start on Monday. We'll go in reverse chronological order. You were in the Belfield Bowl for that clash between DLR and Peamount. 1-1 the final score there. Your thoughts on the game?
Peamount were at stages we were good. They were decent at stages, the good spells. They lots of times where they tested Eve Badana. Eve Badana just done what Eve Badana does against Peamount. She just seems to have world-class games against them every time. She put save after save after save. Then obviously Stephanie Roach missing the penalty before half-time for Peamount wasn't good. You sort of knew where she was going to strike and the way she lined up, and Eve made the save. Same corner, she saved the penalty from Teague in PRL Park last season in the game that was on TG Carr. That turned out to be costful. But when DLR Waves took the lead, you wouldn't have said they didn't necessarily deserve it. It was a nice headed effort. They pressed and pressed and pressed. But when Peamount they tried to huff and puff, but you could see Graham Kelly, he was conscious of his players being tired against Peamount because they had to work hard. He actually used the full complement of subs, which you don't see often in the Women's National League. He brought players on. Louise Corrigan made her first appearance of the season. I thought she was good, apart from the penalty which she gave away. In terms of Peamount, good resilience. If they'd have lost that game, it would have been massive. Like I was listening to James in his post-match huddle after, and he's just telling the players, listen, we're so far behind. Play with freedom. Trying to get them to not play with the shackles and think of the points tally that they have. They've got Shelburne in the league in a couple of weeks after the cup, so that can be an opportunity for them. But I just think for Peamount, it was good resilience in the end to get the draw. Your player, Miss Leitrim, Dervla Byrne, with a lovely headed effort. She couldn't have put it anywhere else to be Eve Badana. Eve said it herself. It was just a beautiful header, and Dervla put it into the back post last play of the game to snatch a draw for Peamount.
Yeah, she might not thank you for calling her Miss Leitrim, but but yeah, she is a Leitrim woman, and we're very, very proud of what she gets up to on the national stage. We hear from some of the people involved in that game. Maybe you caught up after the game. Do you want to maybe intro them?
Yeah, first I spoke to, I don't know which order you're going to go in, but I caught up with James O'Callaghan, Graham Kelly, and Eve Badana. He was sort of very shy talking. Graham was happy, and he wasn't happy at stages, and I think James O'Callaghan, you can see his frustration in itself that they just didn't get going the way he would have wanted.
Well, let's go in that order. First up, James O'Callaghan.
With Peamount United boss James O'Callaghan. James, a 1-1 draw, but I think the fight later on, you'd be happy with just how your girls didn't give up in the injury time to grab the equaliser.
Yeah, listen, I suppose when you get an equaliser in injury time, it kind of has a little bit of a feel-good factor. But we missed the penalty in the first half. We had some good chances at times, but I suppose then when DLR did take the lead, it became tough. But so we were just delighted to, I suppose, equalise in the end. You had chances though, even when they did go 1-up. Eve Badana pulled off some sublime saves. She's a bit of a nemesis against your girls. Yeah, every time we play DLR, I think she gets player of the match. She had a good game. She seems to be in the right place at the right time. In terms of the performance itself, at times you were getting on the ball quite well, and even in the first half, but just couldn't get that clinical edge or that final pass. Must be a little bit disappointed just with that. Yeah, listen, there was some good passages of play by Peamount. Probably just lacked that little end product at times. But it's probably, I suppose, a little break as well. Probably has us a little bit rusty as well. Going the same for both teams as well. But so we just look forward to our next match now against Finglas.
bit of a different task, because maybe if tonight's result had gone well, you may consider putting out some of the younger players, giving them an opportunity, but maybe it's a chance for some of the players who probably need the extra minutes as well to play more and get more sharpness.
Well, yeah, well, listen, you can't underestimate Fingers either. They're a good side, doing very well in the league. So, you know, we have to see what happens.
Brilliant, James. Cheers for your time.
All right, thanks.
There's disappointment with just how it ended, in control for a lot of that game, and just couldn't get it over the line with a last minute header.
Yeah, it's a sickener. You know, I was at 94th minute, 20 seconds left on the clock, or if even, I think we were in injury time, and it's a tough one to take, but we can be proud of the performance, because, as you say, we were in control of the game for long periods. I thought we were the better side on the night, and it's probably 2 points dropped, but look, I've said it to the girls, it's a third game unbeaten, and now, two of them are draws, but you've got to take the positives out of that performance. It wasn't long ago where Peamount were beating us 8-0, so we've got to take the positives out of it. It's a tough one to take now, but we have to put it behind us and get ready for Treaty and the Cup on the weekend. In
terms of the performance, at times they peppered your goal in the first half. They had multiple opportunities after opportunity, headers cleared off the line, efforts cleared off the line, great saves by Eve, and then the second half they had a little short spell, but your defence held tall, and they stood up to it, and it was when the opportunity then came for Katie Malone, she took her header.
And look, that's, you're playing a top side, they're going to create chances, and they did that. And as you say, you have to defend. Defending's a key part of the game, so we have to defend, and we did that in really well tonight. First half I thought we were quite good, and they had that 10-minute spell when they got the penalty that they really got into the game. And then, as you say, just coming towards the end there, they lifted it again. And yeah, look, as I say, our goal was a great goal. Sarah McKev does really well. Katie Malone picks up a great position and brilliant header. So yeah, disappointing now, Aaron, but look, we'll look back on it and we'll take the point. And
what do you say to the girls, especially after such a...
You just tell them how proud you are of the performance, and that's all I said to them when we were in a little huddle there, that I'm super proud of the performance, the work rate, the attitude, the commitment. The girls were superb from 1 to 15, 16, whatever it was we used. They were superb, and that's all you can tell them, is that we haven't got time to dwell on it, which is good, Aaron, because we have a massive cup game that we have to prepare for. So training now is all about treaty, and we think about the league in 2 weeks' time.
Talk to me a little bit about the idea of using the 5 subs. Was it just a case of just trying to keep the players fresh while keeping the Peamount on their toes?
Yeah, we have a squad. You see our squad there, our bench is so strong. You're bringing on players like Rachel Doyle, Sophie Waters, Fiona Donnelly. You're just bringing on quality. Olita Griffin's gone in and been superb for Louise. Sophie Waters goes in and plays out of position. Avra Brearley going in. Avra Brearley's our top goal scorer, and she's going in. So we have quality in the squad, and with just fresh legs, in a game like this, players are going to get tired because of the much work that they have to do. And that was all it was, just fresh legs to try and keep pin Peamount back a bit.
Was it a brave call to start Louise Corrigan, considering she hasn't played for so long?
No, because she's training superb. She's been superb in training. Over the last couple of weeks, she played in the friendly last week. She was outstanding. Louise is a top defender. The penalty, I couldn't really see it from my angle. I don't know whether she gave a little shove or not, but look, these things happen. She's probably a bit rusty, but I thought for an hour she was really good, bar the penalty, obviously. So.
How does this result, does it change your mentality going into Treaty United? But maybe you might have made some changes, or you might have looked at playing different combinations where now you potentially may not?
No, it doesn't change the mindset, because, as I say, I've full faith in the squad. So whatever team we go with on Saturday, if we do make a few changes to keep a fresh, full faith in it, whatever team starts, we know we're good enough. We know we're in for a tough game on Saturday. We know that as well. So we have to just prepare as best we can and make sure we've no niggles after tonight.
Brilliant, Graham. Cheers.
Thanks.
Eve Badana, you tend to have the game of your life against Peamount United. We've seen it last year when you drew with them out there. Tonight again, another draw.
And we seem to have a bit of a problem there. I'm not sure what happened with the Eve's video. We might just try and give it one more chance just to get a play there. Sorry about that. 1 second again. Go back to Eve Badana.
Eve Badana, you tend to have the game of your life against Peamount United. We've seen it last year when you drew with them out.
Unfortunately, that is it. I do have a little bit of a backup option here, but talk us through, before we hear from Eve, talk us through, I suppose, your thoughts on what the two lads had to say after the game, Aaron.
Yeah, if I'd interviewed James O'Connor probably 5 minutes earlier, I might have got a completely different interview with him. I left him on purpose because you could see he was frustrated. He was upset. Graham, I get where he's coming from in terms of about using this squad. Some of his players, the only question you have to ask is, keeping a player like Fiona Donnelly or even Sophie Waters on the bench, how long can he do it for without them maybe being a little bit disappointed, for example? So it'll be one to watch. It'll be interesting to see what team he goes on Saturday. Will he make a change in goal as well? Will he give Rahila Eskenazi another opportunity in goal if the 19s are playing? He may not. So I think for them it'll be just to see what they do the weekend. In terms of Peamount, they have a good opportunity to get a bounce back result. Probably the one team all the non-league teams wanted to avoid the draw was Peamount and Finglas United, who Whitehall Rangers beat in the semi-finals of the Intermediate Cup. Have the daunting trip to PRL Park, and I think for James it'll be a good opportunity to bounce back and get a positive result before heading into that Shelbourne game.
Yeah, speaking of a potential change in goals for DLR, let's hear from Eve Badana now. Hopefully this works.
Badana, you tend to have the game of your life against Peamount United. We've seen it last year when you drew them out there. Tonight again, another draw against them. Penalty save in both games, but you showed what you're about in terms of your calibre. A lot of great saves.
Yeah, well, again, there's 10 players in front of me. We made 5 substitutions. Each one had an impact. So it's honestly, it's a team match. They just make me look good most of the time. But to be honest, I think we're all just mentally we are up for this match. It's always a tough one playing Peamount. So really stepped up today.
And the fact that coming off the back of a break as well, it was a really good performance on your side. Could have had more as well. Probably a little bit disappointed not to add to your one goal.
Yeah, again, to be honest, there was lots of sniffs there. Unlucky with some. Nemo made some great saves as well. So it's, we have to learn. If we scored another, then we don't. We have 3 points.
Talk to me about the penalty. You seem to rate it well and get down well and get a good hand to it.
So yeah, just again. Went the right side, to be honest, and just made myself big. Basically, is half the battle.
You were under a bit of bombardment at stages in the second half, but you didn't wilt. You pulled off save after save, and you could see how much you were frustrating the Peamount defence. Must be bitterly disappointed with how just the last play went.
Yeah, we are. There's no doubt. We wanted 3 points. We came for 3 points. We're leaving with 1. Again, full credit to Peamount. They're a good side. They pushed to that last second. So, fair play. That's football.
Different competition on Saturday. Cup, another opportunity though to get out and put a good performance in.
That's it. Yeah. So now, second half of the season, lots ahead of us. Cup run. Hopefully we start off well.
Brilliant, Dave. Thanks.
Funny you didn't ask her if she thought Regine should get a run at the weekend.
Listen, she's the most humble person you'll ever meet. I've had a couple of opportunities to speak to her, camera on, camera off. Every time you speak to her, she's one of the most humble, dedicated people you'll meet. Listen, she's a smashing goalkeeper for a reason, but I think she's the first, even when Regina gets an opportunity, to get behind her as well. And I think that just shows the model teammate what you want. Always good to help out with our colleagues.
I could listen to the Canadian voice for hours as well. Let's look at some of the other games played over the weekend. Of course, 4 fixtures did go to the wire on Saturday afternoon. Of course, that game on the Peamount DLR game was moved because of one of many sets of nuptials over the mid-season break. I know Dora Gorman got married as well. Congratulations to her and her husband, Stephanie Roach. Obviously got married to Dean Zamber, Bray Wanderers footballer as well. And there was some other nuptials as well. I know you mentioned 1 or 2. Jess, name's sketching right now. Jess Leeson, of course, and Laura Heffernan, they tied the knot as well. And there are a couple of other weddings, a little bit more low-key, trying to keep them low-key, but I know 1 or 2 coming up. So if anyone associated with the league is having a big occasion in the next few weeks and months, the very, very best of luck to you all on that. But let's look back at the football. Let's start down in Treaty. It's a day to forget for the home side. Shells, they put 10 past a very, very poor Treaty side. There's nothing really to take out of this from a Treaty point of view, is there? And not really much from a Shells point of view, other than just the 2 hat-tricks and a couple of other goals that went in all over the place.
Noel Murray's overhead is probably the pick of the goal. But for me, I think there's one massive thing to come out of this game for Shelbourne. And when I was speaking to Noel at the DLR game during the night, I said to him, Gemma Quinn getting 3 goals. Hasn't had many opportunities. After coming from junior football last year with Gillespie, Donny Carney. For me, she's somebody in the second half of the season that Noel is probably going to need to use and get a bit out of. So, good confidence for her. Great opportunity for her to go and stake a claim. He left Jess Stapleton on the bench. Alex Kavanagh was named on the bench, but was injured. Abby Larkham was away. That's something I do actually want to bring up, Breifne, and probably going to get crucified for this, but it's a pet peeve of mine. When players are named on the bench and they're either A, not told out, or B, not there. The Women's National League, it tends to happen way too often. I've seen it with several different clubs. It's something that, as from a media side, it's just frustrating, because if you've only got 4 subs, you've only got 4 subs. There's no problem with that. But naming 6, 7 when the players aren't even there is probably one of the most frustrating things I've seen in the Women's National League. And we've seen it on a couple of occasions in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I don't know what side of the fence I fall on that one, to be honest, because I understand why clubs do it, because when you rock up with 13 players and there's 2 subs on the bench or 3 subs on the bench or whatever it might be, it does give off a very amateur vibe, and clubs just don't want to be attached to that. So they put in names of girls who are eligible, or even in
I won't name a name, right? But I was at a different game on Saturday, and somebody who was named on a bench for a different club, a coach off the club said to me, "Why is she there? I thought she was playing with so-and-so." So, and if people see that as well, so that's what I don't like, because that to me is what the amateur side think. We want, if you don't have them, you don't have them. Call up in 19s or 17s if you can. But just, I don't want to get stuck up on that. In terms of...
I would agree with giving younger girls in the academies or whatever, that opportunity, that chance, even if they have no chance of playing, just to be in the dressing room, to get that warm up in, to get that kind of just awareness of what happens on a match day at the senior level, and blood them, just give them that and make their face more recognizable. The girls kind of will warm them a little bit to see them in training or whatever it might be through the season. Now, I do agree with you on that, but yeah, it's kind of a non-event. Is it worrying how often this has happened to Tralee this year?
Yeah, and then you see the underage players start leaving, going to Wexford. Then Michaela Lawrence as well, who's an underage international, who's been sniffing in and around the first team, gone as well to Wexford. For me, that's concerning as well, that they're leaking players out the door. You'd be a penny for Ashton and Meany's thoughts now, considering the players that have gone out in the last couple of weeks since she's been there. You'd hope that we're going to see a tide turn at Tralee, but it's going to be difficult. And like, Donna Reardon has a massive job there. That result of the weekend won't do them any good at all in terms of confidence. It'll send them even further to rock bottom. And cup game this weekend as well against DLR Waves away. It'd be hard to know what sort of treat will show up on the day, unfortunately.
Yeah, although a cup run, particularly against a reasonably informed DLR, it would be quite nice if they could get that up and running. Can't see it happening myself, but you never know. Another late game, I suppose, everything happening in the last couple of minutes of the match between Galway and their opponents at the weekend. 2 late goals, 2 minutes to go on the clock for Galway. Wexford equalising into injury time. You could have forgotten about the first 87, 88 minutes of the match.
Shelbourne players probably looking at that. Shelbourne coaches looking at that being like beautiful. 3-point shot by Wexford when Galway go 1-0 up, and then all of a sudden, boom, deep in injury time, Nicholas Sinnott pops up and equalises. But the thing is, how many times have Wexford done that? They've just stayed in the game. The problem with them is at times you need to bury Wexford if you have that chance to. Otherwise, they're just like a terrier that they'll just keep coming, and they got that reward laid on. But interesting to see Labatu with the Galway goal. She's now back with the club, having been in America, same college as Aisling Meany. So be another great addition to have back for Alan Murphy, plus the other girls who'll be gradually coming back after leaving certain stuff like that. So with Galway, it's probably not a bad point coming away from Ferry Carrick Park with a share of the spoils. Probably just be a little bit disappointing considering you conceded in the 92nd minute, but they scored late on themselves, so probably a fair result.
Yeah, they'll be happy enough to have recovered that, no more than Peamount on Monday night. Some other big games, Bows and Sligo Rovers did battle at Dalymount Park, and it's kind of been one of those where I suppose Sligo Rovers have been in the position that Bows probably should have been in terms of the league table, just maybe leapfrogging each other, but Bows kind of put that to right the other day. They might not quite leapfrog them, but they've closed that gap right down, and very kind of predictable in terms of how that game was going to play out, really, with Bows just edging it on a 2-1 scoreline. I'm not going to lie, it wasn't the best of the game. I think the fact that Bows had all their academy presentations, both boys and girls,
before the game, they announced the women's Player of the Year awards at halftime as well. Sort of got people into the ground, more people into the ground as well, and got a lot of kids screaming and singing throughout the game. And I think that helped as well. But it wasn't the best game of football. A lovely goal from Erica Burke when Lisa Murphy hit it long. It was allowed to bounce, probably Sligo defensively. A little bit disappointed they let that bounce. It fell nicely to her, and she buried it into the back of the net. And then when they equalised, it's a nice finish from Gemma McGuinness, good build-up play as well. But from a Sligo point of view, Aoife Robinson went wide very shortly before she scored, and that was the warning signs. And then she's got the header for our first goal at Dalymount for Bows, a lifelong Bows fan as well, scoring her first goal in Dalymount. You could see how much it meant to her. I think Stephen Feeney's probably a little bit disappointed with the fact that the way they conceded, because they should have got the shot back in order when they scored, and for them they'll be disappointed. But for Bows, it was a good 3 point, an important 3 points, especially with the cup. You can see the missing Ciara Marr, Katie Bird is missing as well. A couple of other walking wounded. Sinead Taylor's out as well after having surgery recently. So they're missing players, but still managing to get that result was a good result for both.
Yeah, and of course the final game, Emily Corbett again. How often have we seen that? Athlone Town won, whoever they're playing, nil with Emily Corbett on the score sheet. It's almost like a broken record at this stage, but she won't care. I think it's her 12th goal of the season. She's absolutely flying, as are Athlone. They're sitting third in the league, only a single point behind Wexford. I don't think people would have said that you were saying if you said that they were going to be comfortably ahead of Peamount and Galway at this stage of the season. And DLR, they're 7 points clear at DLR. I think people would have been amazed if you said they'd be in the top 5, never mind 1 point off second.
Yeah, and the thing is, they deserve it. The way they're playing, they deserve to be there. That's the biggest thing. It's not as if they're there a lot of the time on luck, or they've just had a couple of lucky results. They've had great results. They've pushed the top sides all the way, and got some very, very big results. I think from them, another win at home, Cork City. Danny Murphy was obviously happy with a lot of aspects of the performance. He was putting out on social media that he's seen improvements from his side. I know I haven't read much into this, but interesting enough, Cork had to wear Athlone's away jerseys on Saturday evening. I didn't really go into much detail, but we've seen it happen once or twice in the League of Ireland. Without going into much detail, I don't really want to comment much on it, but it's another day where a strange thing we could have avoided.
Absolutely. But I think in the grand scheme of things, from an Athlone point of view, they won't really care who's wearing what. They're just going out and they're beating everyone that they come up against this year, and I think it's been an absolutely fantastic season for them. I have to admit, I was a bit concerned when I saw Jessica Hennessy, who's centre half, appear on the right wing to cross the ball. It was inch perfect, a fantastic volley from Corbett, and really gave the Cork goalkeeper no chance. So, listen, whatever.
Just on Cork for a second. I looking at the team sheet, he's obviously put Maria O'Sullivan back in goal. I don't know if Becky Casson was just missing, but he's Maria's captain the side as well. So that's an interesting one, considering she was the captain before she went to America. It's one to watch, but it just shows he must trust her leadership.
Absolutely. Well, we'll see how that pans out, because obviously she'll be going back to the States potentially in this autumn, so she might only have another couple of games really with that side through August before she was back for a September start to the season. There was also an interesting I don't have it now, I actually, this is a bit off the cuff now, but I noticed Sligo also recruited during the last week or so with a player coming in from Donegal who's based in the States as well. She's home on scholarship. Is that something that's positive for the league, when you're parachuting in 2 or 3 girls maybe into a side and then they're disappearing again in August, September?
They also signed a couple of other, Eve Harron coming in as well, Athlone as well. It's a good signing.
Yeah, Eve's been floating around for a while, but she was playing Gaelic through the first half of the year. So
the problem is it's the same as having the conversation about Gaelic football and bringing players back in from Gaelic football. Like, we look at Shelbourne bringing in Sarah Rowe last year. She played 2 games and then back to Australia. You bring her in, you start her against Peamount, it doesn't work, and then it's sort of set and breaking the vibe. It's a tough one, because striking a balance between wanting to win games and then wanting to keep your squad happy as well. It's a fine margin. I don't know whether I like it or I don't like it, but we've seen clubs have success with it. Obviously, Bambi scoring twice to beat Peamount has been a thing. Maria O'Sullivan playing for Cork, but then others have gone back and haven't been successful. So it's bit of a toss of a coin. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not as good. So I don't know. It's a tough one to have a real strong opinion on. Is it great for the league? Probably not.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you. I think it's probably not long term. It's not a good way to build a league where you're disenfranchising maybe the girls who are here 12 months of the year by parachuting in a player for 6 or 8 weeks through the summer. That's the last week's round. Let's maybe take a look at the league table. Despite no league action, of course, this weekend, but let's take a quick look at the league table as it exists at the moment. And of course, there you see it in front of your shells. Top of the league after that win last weekend. Comfortable 10-0 victory down in Treaty. They are 7 points clear from Wexford Youths, Athlone, Peamount, then Galway, 3 points behind the Peas in 5th place. And as you can see, DLR Bohemians will leapfrog and Sligo Rovers with that result in Dalymount, while Cork and Treaty stay towards the bottom of the table. Aaron, it's been a strange kind of season at the bottom of the season for Tipperary or for Cork and Treaty. We've talked about it already. We're not going to bring it up again, but it's just something I worry for where Treaty are going and how long it's going to take for them to actually recover from what's been going on the field with the club over the last few months.
Yeah,
it's hard.
I have a lot of concerns, and at least we can see with the Cork management that they're happier with things now than he was before the break, and you can see that he's sort of getting to what he wants to get in. But we don't necessarily see that coming from the Treaty side of things, which is concerning for me, because you would have thought maybe they'd start to show some sort of progress. The draw against Sligo, there's been nothing really since that. But then again, that may have been just an off day for Sligo because they've gone out the week after and beaten Wexford. So it just may have been one of them days, and I think it could become, if Treaty got a beaten at the weekend, it could become a long second half of the season for them, where they're just basically playing out their league fixtures, just trying to see what they can get. It'd be interesting to hear what way Donald Reardon is trying to approach these sort of things, and just to try and get a bit more in context into what's happening with players, especially with the underage players, just deciding enough's enough, because that's strange that we see 3 players from the one club going to a different club within the space of a week.
Absolutely. Of course, just we did flash up on the screen there some of the latest scores in some of the games at the moment. You see Sligo Rovers 2-1 up in injury time against Ballatown in the Europa Conference. Derry City 1-0 down to Riga in the same competition. And that's obviously the first return legs to happen next week, while Bows in the Men's National League, in the League of Ireland, 2-1 up at half-time at Belfield. They're all live, obviously, on finalwhistle.ie at the moment. Taking a look towards the one other latest score is half-time in the European Championships, score 3-0 to Norway at the moment over our neighbours Northern Ireland. So hopefully the Northern Ireland girls can pull one back in the second half, but it's going to be a long couple of weeks for them. Great to be in the championship, but I think it's going to be some tough games.
A lot of resentment watching that. I'm not going to lie, especially after what happened in Ukraine. It's tough to watch, especially the North having gone and beaten Ukraine in the playoff. It's a hard bitter pill to swallow, because we had our own destiny in our hand going to Kiev, and just didn't materialise.
Now, we started the show with the Women's FAI Cup draw at the fixtures, of course, the first round this weekend. We have already caught up very well with Grace McAuley Ryan, who joined us for the first 20 minutes of the show to talk about Whitehall Rangers' chances against Athlone. But of course, there are other games taking place this weekend. Most notably, I suppose, the non-league sides, Bonaghy United, they make the long journey down to Cork, and Douglas Hall, they make the reverse, where they come up to Sligo, up to the northwest. Some big journeys on Sunday for the teams, the junior teams and intermediate teams taking part in the competition. Of course, Treaty, as we mentioned there a couple of times in the show, they face a resurgent DLR side on Saturday afternoon. Finglas United make the, I suppose, daunting journey to Peamount on Saturday evening, while Bows and Galway will do battle in Dalymount at 6. Which of those games stand out for you? Any kind of that you feel will be worth keeping an eye on?
Yeah, there's a couple. I think the Whitehall against Athlone is going to be interesting, especially if Athlone are missing players that may potentially be playing Gaelic football with the All-Ireland semi-finals on the weekend for the intermediate level. So that could be an interesting one. If a couple are missing on Sunday, it would sort of level the playing field up. Plus, as Grace is saying, they've got some good players there. That'll be one to watch. I feel sorry for Bonnigy United. They have to make the trip to Cork for the second time in the space of 3 weeks, I think it is. They played the All-Ireland intermediate semi-final down there against Douglas Hall and come up short. So that would have been an opportunity for Cork to watch them. It's a good one for Cork. I think probably the tide around is probably Bohs and Galway. I think Galway come up to Dublin with a lot of confidence. Bohs will just be saying, can they get a couple of bodies back again, and can they put up another good display? I think that's probably the game of the round. If I was to say, probably, if anywhere to probably be any shots for non-league, I'd say probably the biggest opportunity may come from Douglas Hall against Sligo. I just think Athlone should be too strong for Whitehall, but I expect Whitehall to give it a good crack. But I think Douglas Hall being in the Intermediate Cup final, they'd probably be the best shout to potentially get one away to Sligo.
Do you give Finglas any opportunity at all in the PRL Park?
It's tough because you're going to have the likes of Stephanie Roach, who was substituted the other day, who's probably going to want to play, going to want to get some confidence back and fill her boots. So if Peamount go all guns blazing, it could be a really, really tough afternoon. Plus, if they play the likes of Michelle Doonan up top, she's looking for an opportunity in the first team to get a sniff. It's going to be a struggle, I think, for Finglas, and I think if they can keep a respective scoreline, they'll be happy.
Yeah, I think unfortunately that might be closer to the truth than Finglas might like it to be. But sure, you never know. These things do happen. It's the beauty of the cup. We could see one of these non-league sides into the second round, where, of course, Wexford and Shells await the 6 winners of the ties this weekend. It's the road to the Aviva, and it all starts
Tallaght Stadium again this year.
I don't know why I said the road to the Aviva. That's obviously the men's one. But yeah, Tallaght Stadium. Let's talk about that for a brief second before we wrap up, because we talked about it a little bit off air before we started the show, and we're both fans of it being played in Tallaght rather than the Aviva because of the atmosphere it brings. You get a better chance of filling the stadium and actually making an event out of it where it becomes itself. I was there for the Champions League game during the week. It's a great stadium when there's a good crowd and a good atmosphere.
Breifne, initially when it happened, I was completely on the other fence. I was completely on the other side of the fence. For me, it was the Aviva. It's a big day out for the girls. But the problem is they're there at 12 o'clock. How can you, in the Aviva, how can you expect fans to come in if they want to watch both games? You can't, because the gap is just too big. It's over an hour between the games. It's tough. Whereas I liked last year in Tallaght. Don't get me wrong, the year before when Peamount won it, it was horrible because there was nobody there with COVID restrictions. But last year there was a good crowd. Shelbourne made a real atmosphere, and I thought it was great. And do you know what? For me, before we can go back to the Aviva, we must start selling Tallaght out as an FAI Cup final. That's when we can start to set the benchmark to say we've exceeded the capacity that we need to go bigger. I think the fact that the FAI have put tickets on sale now, they're not waiting until November, October to start selling. They're actually starting to put them, and they're starting to include them in the likes of emails they're sending out, the fan emails they're sending. So they're including them in all them, and I think that's it's a good decision, and it's a good thing. But I just think, for me, I'd love to see a full Tallaght Stadium for a cup final and see what the place is like. Can we get it rocking? It'd be unbelievable, because we look ahead to the internationals in September, and the Finland game in Tallaght is going to be absolutely unbelievable. Just a reminder, I think tickets go on sale. I think is it either next week or the week after. So they're going to be hot property for people who are looking for them. And that's just a show. That's a sample of what Tallaght can be like, because Tallaght is going to be absolutely buzzing that night.
I still find it surreal that these games sell out, because I have so many happy memories of sitting in games where literally you knew every single person in the crowd. But it's such a buzz now when you go to an international match. And the cup final needs to get to that level as well. And you're right, if we can get 8,000 people, 7,000 people into Tallaght for the cup final, it'd be like the Ladies Gaelic 15, 20 years ago, when every club in the country brought their underage teams up, regardless of who was in the final. It didn't matter. It was the day out. It was the showpiece. It was inspiring these youngsters that this could be you someday if you get to this level. And if you put the effort in, you will get to this level. And I think it's huge. I think every single underage coach in the country with a girls team or with girls on your team should make an effort to get those girls to Tallaght in November for the cup final. It's going to be an absolute belter of a game, regardless of who's in it. You know it's going to be an absolute cracker. Aaron, that's us for the week. We're nearly on the hour again. We're going to cut it short. I don't like seeing those double digits roll over into the hour. It's been a great week. We took it a bit early because of Love Island, of course, has affected our schedule. We might go at the 8 o'clock time. We'll announce it on social media later in the week. But for us, another episode of the Women's National League podcast here on Final Whistle. For myself, Breifne, and Aaron Clark as well with me. I'm sure I speak on both of our halves. Aaron, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll be back with you again next week.